Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Design Recharge. I'm really excited to have Beth Nabi here, and hopefully all that's been caught. Like now I got the live thing. Anyway, hey Shauna, good to see you. All right, so if I didn't get all that across, this is Design Recharge. I'm Diane Gibbs, I'm your host, and I am joined with Beth Nabi, who I met last year at a professor convention conference thing. I guess it's not a convention. Nobody goes to conventions anymore except like salespeople, like, right? I don't know. Anyway, it's the end of the semester. I have one more final left. Beth is already done with all of hers, but I was super impressed with Beth. She has a lot of great energy, and she really loves the band U2 and all their graphics and stuff like that. So we're going to get into that a little bit later. But her talk was all about how graphic design really is also fine art. So she's going to give us a little bit in what she talked about and what I was so impressed with her. So, Beth, thank you so much for being here. Sorry for the crazy, crappy, long intro.
No, thanks for having me, Diane. I'm excited. Thanks for saving the day with our technical difficulties.
Yes, of course. Always happy. So, Andre, good to have you. I think you're in Europe, and so it's always good to have you come in and see. And Meredith's in Alabama. Tiff, I'm not sure where you are, but it's good. Got Shauna's in Florida. Jason is also in Alabama. So good to have everybody here. So, Beth, give us a little bit of your background, because you have a unique kind of way that you got to design.
Well, I see Shauna saying swoop, so a little shout out, UNF shout out. She's a graduate from where I am now, which is University of North Florida in Jacksonville, Florida, where I'm a professor of graphic design in the art and design department. Before that, before I ever knew anything about design, I was an English major, and so this topic especially interests me because I feel like I am supposed to take part in this heritage of fine art, and that scares me a little bit. But I was an English major. I got into graphic design when I learned a little bit about magazine design and layout design and visual communication from the journalism side. So I took a few classes and then said, I want to do this. I love that I can have control over the verbal element as well as the visual element. So I started taking more classes and then decided I wanted to pursue that and went to SCAD, where I got my degree in graphic design, and then worked in the industry for a magazine publisher in Tallahassee for a few years, and I'm now here.
Cool. So you really kind of had a lot of times people don't know what design is. Do you think that you would have done design undergrad had you known, or do you think that the English really was your best fit?
I think I would have done it. I was on my newspaper staff in high school, and so it's kind of funny to think that I maybe wasn't as aware of what graphic design is. I was approaching it then as a writer, and so it just came into a little more, some clarity and form for me in college, and so I think it was a matter of discovering, oh, this is a thing, this kind of architecture of visual information.
Right. Cool. All right, so we met after you presented at CCAC, which is Southeastern College Art Conference, and it's not just people from the South, like there were people from Michigan and all over. But anyway,
we're having it in Pittsburgh next year, so
yeah, definitely not the South anymore. But you were in my friend Kevin he was like the chair of the session, and I can't even remember. It was like, do you remember what the title of the session was?
It was called, Is Graphic Design Fine Art? Does It Really Matter?
Oh, right. So Kevin, and if you know Kevin, he's crazy and fun, and he always poses these kind of crazy questions, and it was really a big hit. Like, it was packed. It was a small little room, and it was a standing room. It was just like sardines in there. And I thought Beth had actually one of the best presentations. And so I have some of the slides. So and I'm going to turn my back, Beth, or not my back, my side. You'll see my side. So while I'm going to this computer, so I can show some stuff. But you just tell me when you want me to plop stuff on the screen, and then sure. I'll go from there. But so anyway, so what made you decide? Like, when what happens is we see these like session type topics, and we see what the chairperson wants to have all the people write about or talk about. And then what made you want to write or want to enter his session?
The topic, the session title scared me. Kevin's a bit of an instigator. You know, I see this topic as graphic design, fine art, and I have a degree. I have a master's of fine art. My students that I'm teaching here get a bachelor's of fine art, and so I had never given it heavy consideration. But I thought, if graphic design isn't fine art, I need to go have a talk with some registrars and straighten some things out. So it intrigued me, it scared me, and I think that's a great kind of point of investigation.
All right, so I agree completely. So all right, so let's dig into it. So really you were debunking a couple of maybe myths that I know I've heard. A lot of times going to a fine art school, you have a lot of graphic designers, but then sometimes we're called the prostitutes of the art world, and you know, I definitely don't feel that way at all. But can you kind of go through some of the things that we should be debunked about it, or why maybe fine artists think that way, or why regular people think that way?
Sure, and why even make a distinction? You know, who's seeking this distinction between the two? Well, I did what any good professor does with a challenging question, and I posed it to my students. And I said, you guys are in this College of Art and Design. What's your understanding of the difference between graphic design and fine art? And I asked this in a class of mixed majors. So I had some students who would go on to become graphic designers in there, but I also had some painters and some ceramicists and some communications majors and some PR majors. And so I thought it was a good mixed crowd to get a response. So their responses sort of followed a line of thought I'd explored in my own research. And it's, graphic design, fine art, these are frustratingly ambiguous terms that we won't come to any conclusion in defining them. So I thought, well, maybe instead of trying to assemble a definition, maybe we can deconstruct them. Maybe we can define them by what they aren't. So if you want to hop over to some slides, I'll share with you some of the responses I got.
So this is the first, oops, wrong. I'm clicking the wrong thing. It's the end of the semester. Okay. All right, let me undo the Zoom. Okay. This is the first one. Is this okay if we're going in order?
Yes. Let me switch. I can bring it up too. Okay, I can see it. So, I prompted the class. I said, what is graphic design, or what is fine art? What distinguishes them? And a hand shot up and was quick to say, well, fine art is handmade. And I agreed that many of the works we traditionally consider fine art are indeed handmade. We think about paintings, we think about ceramics. But if you'll go to the next slide, we see that this isn't necessarily a disqualifier for graphic design. I mean, graphic design has a legacy in the handmade. The word itself, graphic, has an etymology in writing and in drawing. And so, it's been done by hand much longer than it's done by machine, by computer. And so, what is handmade anyway? Painters use a brush, and sculptors use a hammer and a chisel. And what's so sort of ignoble about designers wanting to use another tool, the computer? So if we can skip ahead to the next slide, another hand shot up and said, well, fine art is about mastering a skill. And I do agree with this, but I don't think it's sort of the sole qualifier for what makes something fine art. If you'll advance to the next one. Here we have a famous work of art by Alberto Giacometti, and a forgery. And it's been so long since I put these slides together that I can't quite remember which one's which. But that sort of proves my point that, you can have mastery of craft, and you can have talent, but that doesn't elevate something to a status of fine art. I think the forgery is on the left. I think the original of his Drowning Man sculpture is on the right. So, but I had some students in this class who were really gung-ho on distancing graphic design and fine art. They would make it their mission. So this was the next argument. Well, fine art can't be mass-produced. And I thought, oh, graphic design's in trouble if this is going to preclude our being considered fine art. Here you have some works by Albrecht Dürer, who was famous as both a painter and as a printmaker. He revolutionized printmaking, and I think printmaking has earned an elevated status as a fine art as well. And so graphic design's origins are in being mass-produced or in mass communication, and I think we have an example here where that doesn't necessarily mean it can't also be fine art. What do we have next?
So the next one was, well, it doesn't have clients or budgets.
I love this one. There's this idea that, like you said, graphic designers are sort of the prostitutes of the art industry, and we get dirty because we dwell in money. And so there was this assertion that fine art doesn't involve clients or budgets. And I thought, what is the kind of quintessential fine art piece I can talk about? And I thought about, well, a Renaissance master, Michelangelo, with his Pietà. And, these works were commissioned. He did this work under the commission of a French cardinal. And, plans were made and budgets were discussed. And Michelangelo had to know how much marble he was going to have access to and had to certainly allot his ducats carefully. And you could absolutely write a design brief for the Pietà. So I think that kind of squelched that argument that it doesn't deal with clients and budgets. So then there's this, well, fine art isn't about selling stuff. Again, we don't want this commercial reputation. And that's, graphic design, before it was known as graphic design, was known as commercial art. But here I have Picasso's signature, and a painting by Picasso can go for twice as much with the signature on it. And so it's absolutely about commerce and about selling, the name of the artist itself, the reputation of the artist himself or herself. And so, we kind of went down this road of sort of refuting every argument that came up and trying to kind of come up with some definable terms for the two. And so this got me into the idea of signature and what signature does to a work. There's this quote by a designer, Ellen Lupton: "The assertion of artistic presence is an alluring area of practice." And I thought, what does it mean to have a signature on a work? What influence does it have? Why do artists sign their works? Why don't they? And does a graphic designer putting their signature on a piece of work somehow elevate it to the status of art, of fine art? And so going back to Michelangelo's Pietà, and looking at when this tradition of signing works really came about, it goes to the Renaissance, from when these artistic endeavors became less collaborative processes, like a bunch of monks in a monastery creating illuminated manuscripts, to individual endeavors, a singular artist creating a piece, an expression. If we can go back to the Pietà.
Do you want me to go back?
Yes, please.
Oh, sorry. I'm trying to read your mind.
So we have the Pietà, and we have Michelangelo's signature kind of across the strap across Mary's chest. And the Renaissance masters were inconsistent about signing their works and about which works they signed. And this was the only work that Michelangelo signed. He put himself sometimes, he put his self-portrait in some of his works, but this is sort of the only overt appearance of Michelangelo's name. And there are a lot of conflicting theories about why it exists here. He was 24. He was still early in his career. It's got a very prominent placement. I mean, it's at the forefront. It's right across Mary's chest, but it's very shallow. The lines of the signature are much shallower than any of the other sort of sculptural marks on the rest of the statue. And it would only have been seen up close. It wouldn't have been seen far away under sort of the dim altar light inside. And so, the theories are, is the signature there as sort of a mark of artistic expression? Is it an artist saying, I did this? Or is it kind of a marketing campaign in the 1500s? Is it exposure? Was it at the request of the patron? So, it's unknown exactly why the signature appears on this piece. so whether it's self-consciousness, whether it's self-promotion, it's unclear, but I think those ideas continue to apply to how graphic designers operate today. So I think now we can go ahead.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm just getting over a cold. It's like the end of the semester, grades are in, and my body knows exactly when it can shut down.
Right.
But grades are in. So we go forward a few hundred years, and we have Toulouse-Lautrec, Henri de Toulouse-Lautrec, a famous sort of crossover artist and designer. And he was practicing with contemporaries like Monet and like Degas, and I think some of his paintings are easily confused with Degas. And but he was also designing and printmaking, and kind of what does that mean? You know, is it the change of medium? Is it that we go from painting with brush and canvas to a lithographic process, and we get into that mass production and the production of multiples? And so I love his work, and he was exhibited at MoMA last summer, which I think in and of itself was a very interesting decision, that you have this graphic designer and these works of commerce so prominently featured in this museum. And his signatures appear more frequently on his design works than they do on his paintings. And it's sort of the same kind of unclear issue as it was with Michelangelo, is what, you know, why put the signature on there? Is it a mark of ownership? And with Michelangelo, you know, sure, he can sort of chisel that in and say, Michelangelo was here, I did this. Right. But with Lautrec, these are things that are getting mass produced, and so it's not about this, you know, kind of mark of presence and I was here and I created this. That issue of, you know, what the signature is doing changes as we now enter the consideration of mass production. And so the theory is that it was about marketing himself, and it was about exposure and getting his name out and getting more work.
So Jason asked, did Michelangelo get clients telling him, hey, there's no budget, but it'll be great exposure? Or what I love when people call the university and like, oh, this will be a great project for your students, really good portfolio builder.
Right, yeah. We can't afford to pay you, but you'll get a lot more work from it. Yeah, I have no doubt.
You want me to move to the next one?
Let's see. Where am I even? We've been talking a lot.
It's right before Nike.
Oh, we can pause here for a second.
Okay.
So is all this making sense, and you have any questions so far?
No, this is I love this. So I'm trying to read what's going on in the chat as well. So Tiff says, could you just make a painting first or carve something small so we can make sure you're the right fit? Oh boy, I'm sure. But I think that is, if he was 24 when he did the Pietà, I think that's a really good, because he didn't sign a lot of his later work, so I mean, I'm sure he has to get his name out there, but it was pretty prominent.
Well, and there's a theory that its placement sort of over the Virgin Mary's heart, you know, was an extension of the religious expression of the piece. So, but that was sort of my jumping off point with the students, is considering this very sort of classically accepted, traditionally accepted work of fine art, this sculpture, and seeing how many similarities it shares with, you know, graphic design pieces, and, you know, especially with Toulouse-Lautrec, somebody is kind of equally talented and qualified artistically, and then putting this brand and this signature on his work. So,
right.
So I think we can advance.
Okay. The Stephen Heller quote.
Sure. So again, this idea of signature fascinates me, and when it's used and when it's not, and you know, how having the presence of a signature impacts our perception of a piece, the worth of a piece, and you know, it occurred to me that graphic design, at least in my own experience, is a mostly anonymous practice. We certainly have the superstars whose style becomes so recognizable that it becomes a signature in itself. But, you know, my years of work as a graphic designer at a magazine, I didn't get to put my my name on my layouts. It was written by this person and photos by this person. And then, I would take my magazine home and flip to the masthead and show my mom my name in the really little print and said, I did this, I worked on this. So my signature's in there, it's somewhere, but it's not prominent. And is that an issue, a matter of sort of the collaborative process of design, and it's not this entirely holistic endeavor. We're no longer kind of responsible for every part from conceptualization to production, and it gets sort of parsed out. So I did some research. I love Stephen Heller. I mean, anybody interested in design and any student of design needs to read Stephen Heller. And he had this article essentially saying graphic designers need to sign their work. Anonymity inspires mediocrity. And I understood the point. I thought, well, sure, put in your name on something. There's ownership. There's responsibility. And I think the internet is a great example of how anonymity inspires mediocrity, and much worse if you delve into the comments of any story published online. When we get into the world of the trolls. So this got me thinking. Anonymity inspires mediocrity, and what does that mean for a discipline like graphic design, where our work does mostly go unsigned? So where are we? What's next?
Whoops, okay. I went too far. I was trying to click and it clicked too far. There we go.
Perfect. Okay, so I thought about these two pieces, these two fairly anonymous pieces. They're, again, are theories, they're speculation about who did the winged victory of Samothrace. And then, if you're a graphic design historian, you know that Carolyn Davidson did the Nike logo. But for the most part, these are fairly anonymous pieces. But I think you have mediocrity in neither of these. You have winged victory, which, was this sort of offering to the gods to protect seafarers and to protect men at war and to grant them victory in war. And then you have the Nike logo, which represents something pretty similar. You have this representation of excellence and victory and personal performance. So two incredibly different artistic expressions. You have a sculpture, you have a logo, but using the same visual rhetoric, the same metaphor for victory and performance, and both anonymous. And so, I do think in instances like this, you have graphic design elevated to the status of fine art. So what do we go to next?
Next is Subway.
Okay. And so, in kind of considering what's graphic design and what's fine art, there are comments that, if it's in a museum, it's art. And there's so many museums around the world of odd little types that's debatable. But of course, everything's art the second we call it art. But another thing I saw in MoMA last summer was this graphic standards manual of Massimo Vignelli's for the New York City Transit Authority system. And I thought, wow, it's interesting. It excites me because I know it and I'm familiar with it. And I think, wow, it's kind of earned this spot amongst other, these great works of art from history. And so I think if we go to the next one. So I thought, okay, I want to talk about Massimo Vignelli and kind of compare him to another traditionally accepted fine artist, Vincent van Gogh. And I went and I typed this. This isn't a leftover mistake on your screen. I intentionally screen capped this. So because my computer system recognized Van Gogh, but it didn't recognize Vignelli. So you have this well-known famous artist, and then you have kind of the anonymous Vignelli, again known by graphic designers, known by us, but not known by the most of the world, whereas Van Gogh's easily recognizable,
right,
and identifiable. So if we advance another slide. So and a few other scenes I captured in New York. On the left, you have Van Gogh, a famous piece, Starry Night, in MoMA. Crowds kind of constantly gathered around this work, wanting to experience it in person, and or rather document it. I don't know that anyone in that picture is experiencing it. Right. I think there's something exciting about being in the presence of an original, another kind of another point of consideration for graphic design versus art. Is it about originality or existing in only one iteration? And I don't think it is. So you have these people just wanting to kind of document its celebrity, its kind of star status, and they've got their iPads out and their iPhones and probably taking really crappy photos. That then what are they going to do? Are they just proving they were in its presence? And that returns to the issue of signature. Does signature start to overshadow kind of the artistic expression of something? Do we become so consumed by who did it and its provenance that that's what the piece becomes about? So, not too far away from MoMA, down near Bryant Park in New York, I took this picture of my cousin descending into the subway stairwell in New York. And, we see Vignelli's signage above her, and this is all over New York City. And I think it's a masterpiece. I think it doesn't get, finer art than this, and it's ignored, it's invisible. And I think that's an interesting distinction to make, is that art sort of exists to be acknowledged, whereas design a lot of times has an aim to be invisible, to be unnoticed. It has some other communicative goal at work. So I think Vignelli's kind of masterpiece of the New York City signage system is all over New York and kind of unnoticed every day, but equally as and elevated in art, equally as fine in art as Van Gogh's masterpiece.
Well, and I also think it's about that, working. So much of design is communicating. It's communicating a message, or it has a purpose. It's not that Starry Night doesn't, but all those people aren't probably doing what Van Gogh had intended for you to do, is take a picture of it and take it home and look at it later. I don't know, So, but I think that's so funny. People are just passing by, but they think of it as something useful, and they're not maybe thinking of it as a piece of beauty and art, which of course I think it is as well.
Sure, and and that term gets used a lot, and as people try to distinguish between art and design, and they want to say, well, design is utilitarian, design is useful, design is functional, and I do think those are at the forefront of design's goals. But I don't, I think art has use, art has a function. It might be something more along the lines of inspiring emotion or eliciting some sort of expression, but it's really a matter of we can continue to define our way down all sorts of rabbit holes, but
right.
But I don't think something's being useful means it's not fine art.
Absolutely not. Well, and if you think about like the Last Supper, the Sistine Chapel, there wasn't TV or other, it was like somebody telling a story, or you could go and look at the story. And I have no idea what they're doing out there. It sounds like they're doing major construction. They're cleaning the printmaking room.
I can commiserate. My office neighbors the auditorium and the Fine Arts Center. Again, my office is in the Fine Arts Center, so we can just shorten the argument and say, yes, graphic design is fine art, but we share the music building, and so there's constantly something going on.
Right. Well, all right. So, but I'm with you. I really, if that was one of your students said, oh, well, graphic design is useful and fine art isn't, then many fine art pieces are. Like Michelangelo, they were meant to communicate something. So.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think long before, I think the idea of art for art's sake emerged around the Renaissance, and prior to that, these beautiful things that were being created were utilitarian. These Greek vases, had a purpose, and so I don't know why there's such this kind of serious intent to separate the two and to draw a line of distinction between the two. I think the way I ended my session at CCAC was saying that graphic design isn't inherently fine art, but painting isn't inherently fine art, and sculpture isn't inherently fine art. I think all of these things have the possibility to be fine art. It's, art and fine art is an aspirational ideal, and so where else is that appropriate but a college campus where they are seeking these degrees in fine art.
So Maxine's asking about Liechtenstein. So what are your thoughts on that, on him specific?
Whether he's design or fine art, or
yeah, I guess maybe.
I think he's painting. I think if you art is about what resonates with you. Art is about one person saying it's art, and so I think it can qualify as both.
Right.
I think it's another example of a great crossover between turning what was once a necessary production measure, the halftone screen, and that was the key to mass communication. I think the incredibly innovative idea of taking that and turning it into an artistic expression that didn't require it. He's painting halftone dots. And so I think a lot of times the designation of art is about innovation and a new idea, and so I think it qualifies.
So Eric wants me to ask you about how you two put Liechtenstein in motion. Hi, Beth. It's your YouTube friend, Eric from Chicago.
Hi, Eric. Yes, another graphic designer, another Uber fan, and I think he's referring to you two using some of Liechtenstein's graphics during the Pop Mart tour in the late 90s. I think that's what he's getting at, but I may be a little rusty on that.
Well, how do you feel about anonymity? Like, I feel like as a designer, I really like I know I do this every week, but I like it when I'm small on the screen more than when I'm big, because I have these weird, see how my hair's doing this weird, it's like, it still does it, even if it's not behind my ear. So anyway, I have this crazy hair today, but like, I like being behind the scenes. I like being helping somebody else and have their dream, their company, their dream come to life. And I think that's what we do as designers. But like Stephen Heller saying that we need to sign each piece. And, I've worked in the magazine business as well. So I was always in the masthead, but my name was never in the article, even if I had done a lot of the conceptualization or even done the illustrations or done the coming up with a photo and, art directing the shoot. How do you really feel about it?
About that, well, I think you got to the heart of it, which is sort of, do we consider ourselves designers or do we consider ourselves artists? I think designers inherently are at the service of somebody else and know that, and are, know they're about an idea being realized, about something being communicated. It's in our blood that we're in somebody else's service. And I think most designers would agree that the most painful thing to do is come up with your own damn business card and logo. It's dreadful. So I think that's maybe built into who we are. And maybe that's a distinction of who considers themselves an artist and who considers themselves a designer,
Yeah. Okay. So, you also, the next slide was the meme.
Okay.
So I'm gonna go on to that one because I think it's so funny, and it has to do with what we're talking about.
Yes. So one does not simply explain memes to someone. This is where I want to go next. I'd spent last CCAC talking about anonymity and ownership, looking more at ownership and looking at signature and how signature plays a role in the elevation of graphic design to a fine art status. And so, we just had the CCAC call for papers, and I saw that Kevin was doing a part 2 of his panel, and it was such a great session. Shout out to Kevin if you're watching. It was a great session, and I was excited to participate in it again, but wanted to do something different. And so I said, well, what's the opposite of signature and ownership and being proud of your work? And I thought, let's go to the bastards of art and design. Let's go to internet memes. And I think they're a fascinating realm of the internet, of art, of design. I'm really big into visual rhetoric, again, coming from a verbal background, an English background, and they're brilliant in terms of the rhetorical devices at work, and there's so much going on with them. And whereas with art and in some cases design, you want to know who produced something. With memes, we don't care who was the first person to, it's so far removed. It's, some sort of still shot being kind of co-opted from, a show, a movie, whatever, and then getting applied to a situation that has nothing to do with it, but the connection is always so brilliant. And so it's all about anonymity. We don't know who the first person was to come up with the idea of a meme, and we just kind of take it for our own uses and keep rolling with it. And so no idea what I'm going to talk about specifically about memes at CCAC in October, but I'm excited to study it and see where it goes.
But it's funny because in so much stuff on the internet, people will just take and use on their own. And I regularly have to tell students or clients, they're like, oh, well, it's on the internet. And I'm like, but you can't use it. And they're like, oh, well, it's there. I'm like, yeah, well, a book's in the library. You can take it home, but you have to bring it back. Just because a car's in the parking lot doesn't mean you can just take it. So for me, I think it's funny how people are like, oh, well, I just Googled it. It's out there. And I don't know if they'll ever get to a place where they will lock things down better, or if it's just going to be like, hey, you're just supposed to do the right thing. And I don't know. What do you think about that?
I think we have to change. I think the ideas of citation are changing, and appropriation and plagiarism. I think, like everything, it has to evolve. And, the methods are different. It's not about going to a library anymore and finding something printed in, a textual reference. It is available digitally and does. I met with the director of our writing center the other day, and she was talking about how hyperlinks, simply the act of having a hyperlink is the new citation. It indicates where it came from. So I think kind of new ways of thinking have to evolve, but it is even more challenging to be original now. Before, we just didn't have exposure to everything, and so you could come up with an idea and never know that 20 other people had already come up with it. But now I know my students get frustrated because in the early stages of brainstorming for an idea, they come up with an idea or a name or an idea for visuals, and they go look on the internet and they say it's already been done. So, well, everything's already been done. How do you make it better? How do you make it your own? How do you make it original?
Right.
So memes are none of those things, and I'm excited to study them.
So this kind of goes into the last part of your talk, was about how design is really, a lot of times it's for everyone and intended to be consumed by everybody. There's always an audience, but it has a bigger than just a small amount of people. So why do you think this is significant, or is it significant from how art is consumed or made?
Well, I think it's something else that distinguishes them. Again, I think we're dealing with a few issues here. One, the difference between art and design, and then there's a distinction between art and fine art. Fine art being something you master, something that's concerned,
right,
with aesthetics. And so I think design has an audience. I think that's kind of a requirement of it. We always design. Who's your target audience? Who's your demographic? Who are you trying to reach? I think art doesn't have an intended audience. And I think in trying to think about the two, again, digging into rhetoric, I like the metaphor of art is design is a carrier pigeon, and art is a message in a bottle. Design, you're really hoping this expression gets to somebody, whatever's being communicated. And if it doesn't, it kind of is seen as a failure. Art, it's produced, there's an expression, and if it's received by somebody, if it resonates with somebody, that's great, but not accomplishing that doesn't mean it's a failure. I don't think art can fail. I think we can just not like it. Design can fail.
Right. I love that analogy. I wrote it down. I'll be using that if that's all right with you.
Absolutely. That is a Beth Nabi original.
Okay, good. I love it. All right, so I'm going to read my question because it's long. So when we were talking about, the significance between fine art and design, so it led me to another question about our roles as designers and the responsibility and impact that we have on our communities in the world. So why do you think, because I know you really believe it, I forgot to make me big, so this is why I like it small. But anyway, so why do you think design for social good is important? Because I know you do. And how can maybe a freelancer or somebody that's working for a company incorporate this into their practice?
Well, my foray into design for social good started a few summers ago. I was in London at the Design Museum, which is a remarkable museum. That again, as you walk through it, your ideas and definitions of what graphic design is or what design is will change and will evolve. But I saw this piece that's up on screen, something called Kit Yamoyo, which was inspired by some people who saw that I think the #1 killer of children under 5 in Africa is diarrhea, and thousands of children are dying from this disease because they're not getting the medicines they need. But these same people saw that Coke was reaching these remote villages in Africa. And so, the connection was there, that design spark of using Coke's distribution model to get these medicines out. And so this kit that has everything you need in it, it has the medicine, it is in itself a measuring cup, has the instructions. These kits were designed to wedge between the Coke bottles and these crates, and I just thought it's brilliant, and it gives me goosebumps. And this is what design is. I mean, design is about persuasion. It's about motivating an audience. It's about eliciting a designed response. And so, we're sort of trained to do that for commercial purposes and commercial applications. We come up with packaging that's going to sell a product. We come up with a brochure that's going to sell a politician. But why not take these powers of persuasion and influence to sort of nobler causes that are going to improve society and solve problems and save the world? So because of seeing this, and this kit, the story of it is told in a documentary called The Cola Road, which I'm hoping to bring a screening of to UNF and bring the director and some of the designers on it. So this inspired me to teach a design for social good class, and then really made me lament that it's right now just an elective, and I think it needs to be part of the core curriculum. I think this needs to be an idea that's standard in classes. And then as far as kind of freelancers sort of engaging with this idea of design for social good, something I've discovered in preparing my course was Milton Glaser, the iconic Milton Glaser, has an article called something along the lines of 12 steps on the designer's road to hell, where he kind of presents these 12 scenarios that increase in severity. And they get you thinking. They get you thinking about how you would respond. And I think the kind of lowest level, the most innocuous is, would you as a designer design something to appear bigger on a shelf? Or would you design a brand new winery's logo to look old, to look aged, to look like it has a history? And I think those are very important questions, even at that level, for kind of where your ethical threshold is as a designer. And then it escalates to something along the lines of, would you do the design work for a product knowingly has caused kind of deaths? So when I posed these questions to my students, every response was, it depends, and it does. It depends on the scenario, it depends on your own background and your own values, but I think that idea needs to get instilled early, that as a designer you have responsibilities, you have to figure out, again, your own sort of ethical threshold on what you'll do and what you won't do. I've designed, I think my threshold was, I was designing the bank inserts for, or the inserts in bank statements, not that huge of an evil, but it just really got me down. And I thought, what am I doing? Who's reading this? This stuff gets thrown away. So.
Well, so I showed something because I also think that you have to make a decision as a designer what you're going to do and what you won't. And so I have a client who is a sex addiction therapist, because I don't know if you know, but sex addiction is huge, and I didn't know this until I started. But so there's a ton. I read a book called Half the Sky back in last year or the year before, and it's really, there's a lot of sex trade, and there's a lot in Alabama, and so they do it's huge at the Super Bowl. Anyway, Half the Sky, great book, really sad, sort of. I mean, it's not like one you can read to your kids at night, but it's really, it really changed kind of the way I was thinking. So then this client of mine was telling me, my husband just sent me a text. He called me, and then he sent me a text. Hope, I haven't heard from you. I hope you're alive. Anyway, I will text him back in a second. But
he's obviously not tuned in.
No, he doesn't watch. He doesn't. I do this. No, he does. He knows I do it. But anyway, so she showed me. Now he's talking about the dog. So sorry about that. So anyway, she showed me this site that was. I don't want everybody to go there, but it's amazing. You go on YouTube and watch the little video, but it's called Ashley Madison. It's these men go to this website, and they clearly are married. It's for married men to go and have flings with these girls, and you get to choose, from your girl. And they're old enough. I mean, the girls are, whatever you call the escorts or something. And so, but to me, it's like, and this was like going to be on the Super Bowl, and it was a band commercial or something. I don't remember exactly how, but and I showed it to my students, the YouTube commercial, and they thought it was a joke. They were like, "Oh, is this a spoof?" I'm like, "No, this is real. Somebody had to design this. Somebody had to work for this company." And I mean, the production stuff is pretty. It looks good, but it's like you have to make a decision. And you have to know, people will be like, oh, it won't affect anybody. It won't. But there are kids who are looking at things that they shouldn't do, and then it ends up, it's just like sex addiction is very much like alcohol addiction. Any addiction can take over your life if but it's a real thing, and I didn't obviously I don't have that, but I didn't know about it.
Well, yeah, and it's just, it kind of goes to our profession, which is that everything needs to be designed, even these sites sort of fostering adultery. And I'm absolutely familiar with what you're talking about, which is scary because it has been presented so mainstream. So I think sometimes a lot of doing design for social good is just it's about not doing bad. If you deem that bad, there are people who, that clears their ethical threshold. But absolutely, it's somebody had to design that, and
yeah.
Was it a paycheck? Is it, or is it something you believe in and you're helping propel?
Right, and that's one thing I love, like, about design. I can get on the back. I can help somebody. I always say that my 7-word bio is I'm a lineman. I'm an offensive lineman and getting your message across. I mean, I'm like 5 foot nothing, but I'm your lineman. I'm keeping the bad stuff out, and I'm protecting the message going forward, and I'm helping you to propel your message. It's your message. It's your dream, and that's what we get to do as designers. We help your stuff get across, but, man, I don't want to be on Ashley Madison's team.
Well, and even we looked at a lot of examples in this class of where maybe the line was a little too blurred, and we looked at commercials for pickup trucks shown kind of pulling at this, boat up a sand dune, and then it says, in really low contrast lettering at the bottom, fictionalization or something like that. And so where's the line between visual rhetoric to sell something and representation of the effectiveness or abilities of a product?
Right. Yeah. All right. So I think we had a couple more images, so I want to pull those up. So maybe we'll go into the U2 stuff. You have a huge passion for U2, the band,
mm-hmm.
And your research has actually taken you to some kind of interesting design avenues. So tell us a little bit about it and because you're dedicating a significant amount of your time. They've been around for a long time, so they have a lot of visual language that goes along with them. And they definitely they do a lot of stuff that's for good, so that's great. And it goes with the design for social good. So what kind of things have you uncovered, and what's your next thing of study with YouTube?
Well, I spent many years sort of hiding my fangirl status as a 30-something-year-old and a little ashamed of it. And then once I realized the secret to academia, which is anything is research, I thought, I'm going to do this. So I have been a fan of U2 since I was 13. And it's an incredibly frustrating thing for a person who eventually identifies as a graphic designer to have a favorite band who doesn't have an iconic logo. And so here you see, this was a picture I took in Target, and you see, immediately recognizable bands and brands. You see AC/DC, Red Hot Chili Peppers, the Stones' iconic Lips, Nirvana, and I never see U2 on these shelves because they don't have a consistent iconic logo that they've used repeatedly. And so my research has been about finding out why, or maybe what's less interesting than why, because I think the why is easily answered, is what result it's had. But so here, these are sort of the biggest money makers in history, and I consider U2 among these easily. And all of these are fascinating stories. The Beatles logo, I don't think was ever used on one of their album covers, but it was on the drum kit, and it just became so much a part of their brand. And you see something like Metallica, and it transmits information immediately. You know what that band is about, and they've been that way all along. And so I think if we go to the next slide, these are some of U2's contemporaries. So even at the time, they're coming up sort of post-punk, post-new wave, and these were the bands that inspired them, but also they played along with. And even these, some of these guys have truly iconic, recognizable, cemented logos. And then you get to, kind of the plight of the U2 fan. So if you're a Stones fan, most likely you're going to, I think tattoo and literal branding is sort of the next extension of my research. But you see some different iterations of it, but everyone's got the lips and the tongue. It's iconic. And then if we move to the next one, if you're a Beatles fan, you may see it in, again, some different visualizations, but we see that sort of tall, elongated type, and then that T sort of hanging down like the neck of the guitar. And then if you go to the next one, this is the life of a U2 fan. This was a guy. I took this picture at a concert in 2011, and he's got an icon from every era on his leg. There is no choosing. There is no one symbolic U2 reference. We kind of have to cover our bodies. And so if you advance to the next one, what's exciting about, I think I probably should have put this one at the end, but we can go ahead and talk about it.
Well, no, I can go to this one.
Okay, yeah, this is great. So these are U2's logos over the years. I don't think we can even call them logos. I think they're type treatments for each album. And, they're different. There's no consistency, but I think the consistency is in the name. It's so, it's not a word. It's a letter and a number. It's U2. And I think the name itself becomes this graphic element that becomes a brand no matter what typeface it's in. And so now you can go back. The exciting thing about Twitter and social media is I can connect to, in this instance, Steve Averill, who is U2's graphic designer and has been with them since before they were U2. I mean, he's responsible for their naming. They were originally feedback and the hype, and then he suggested a list of names, and one of them was U2, and Bono hated it. Bono's quoted as saying it's a shite name. But Steve liked it because of its potential graphic impact. And I think you can see that here with this poster. U2 is sort of the biggest, has the biggest presence on the sign. And they're still that way. That's what Bono wants more than anything, is just to be the biggest band in the world. And this name and these visualizations sort of allow that. So I like studying their visual history, their visual identity, and seeing kind of what not having a logo. I think it's allowed them this open-endedness. It's allowed them to change every album more along the lines of an individual artist.
Right.
And so if we get to that slide with the 4 album covers on it, these are their first and most recent albums. The first 2 are, and this is kind of quintessential U2. There is no consistency. There is no kind of clarity. The top 2 are alternate album covers for Boy, which came out in 1980. One released in the UK on the left and in Europe, and the one on the right released in America. And you'll see on the first one, it says U2 on there. It's very tiny and it's in the boy's hair, but they weren't at all concerned with getting their name out there and kind of establishing that strong graphic presence from the beginning. And then the bottom 2 are, it's another instance of releasing multiple visualizations of the same album. The one on the right was the one that got dropped into everybody's iPhones, much to the sort of hatred of the nation who felt violated. But really, it was a blessing to you all. And then the one on the left was the popular release, the commercial release that came out in physical form later. And then just for Record Store Day that just passed, they released the white album on the right again. So there is no continuity. There is no consistency, which are sort of marks of a good brand. But U2 have a solid brand. So in that, they're an anomaly, that they don't have that consistency and clarity in the visual form, but they're an incredibly strong band that's had longevity, unlike most others.
So how do you think, is it just because they make awesome music? There's lots of other, bands that make good music, but they maybe have more of a consistent brand, but they haven't continued to make new music, or as much new music, or why do you think? Is it just they're just awesome because you love them?
Pretty much, yeah. They're amazing. I think they are about discovery and rediscovery. I think there is no contentedness. I mean, I can't believe I'm going to go here, but they still haven't found what they're looking for. It's this restlessness, and so they have a restlessness that they explore sonically, and they explore kind of as a band and as individuals. But then that restlessness translates to their sort of visual presence, and I think it's just constantly wanting to challenge themselves and discover themselves, and Bono has this need to be relevant, and he's still kind of defining and realizing what that means, and so we go along for the ride with him. But I leave in 2 days. I leave Friday morning for Seattle and ultimately Vancouver, where they kick off their world tour next week, Thursday night. So I'm going to see what's
No, go ahead. So you're going
to see what's in store in terms of graphics and stage graphics and T-shirt graphics and kind of what they're doing this go around.
Have you been able to meet Steve, the designer?
I have. I met Steve Averill. There is a thing called the U2 conference. It's a thing, and it's amazing. I can't wait till we have the next one. But in 2013, they had the U2 conference at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in Cleveland, and I met Steve Averill, and that was a big deal to me. Like, nobody else really knew who he was, and I'm chasing him down the hallways of the hotel with a copy of Boy, saying, sign this, and scaring him thoroughly. But I got to have some good conversations with him, and he has all these stories about how the 4 men in the band have reacted to, some of the work he's done over the years, and when they've butted heads, and when Steve's asserted himself. And so that was kind of a rock star moment to meet Steve Averill.
So, but you've also met Bono, and so I have that image.
Yeah, that was okay. No, this happened a week after I met you. CCAC was October whatever of 2014, and then October 17th, the universe aligned. I won a contest. I barreled my way down to Miami and got to meet him in this very intimate setting, and had 60 seconds with him, and can't really remember much of it. What do you say to the person that you've sort of idolized for most of your life? But I did get to meet him.
Well, I think that's great. So, have you thought about like putting together? I mean, maybe they already do something like this, but have you thought about putting together something with Steve or having, because maybe, he's doing it, he's designing, but you're really analyzing it, and sometimes we don't take enough time to like take everything in and kind of go over it all. I mean, is that
Sure.
something?
Oh, I would absolutely love to collaborate, and if he's watching, he can reach me at Beth and Bono. But he and his company put out a remarkable book a few years ago called Stealing Hearts at a Traveling Show that sort of details U2's visual history. So in some ways that's made my research a little easier because it's compiled, but in other ways it's, I want to discover things for myself and think there still is plenty there to discover. I would love to collaborate in some form with him. And then I think my next venture is I want to do a series of U2 infographics and kind of taking their history and sort of tying it up in these sort of bite-sized visual forms.
Cool, that's awesome. All right, so I'm going to share. So if people want to get in touch with you,
Mm-hmm.
I have all of your ways to get, and it really didn't go over well, but okay. Well, there's no way to do hard returns, I guess. I could just type or copy and paste it. So you can reach her at beth.nabi,
Mm-hmm.
Nabi at unf.edu. You can also Twitter for design-related stuff is at Beth Nabi. And then if you want to do Twitter and if you're a U2 fan, then you want to make sure you do Beth and Bono. And then Instagram, just Beth Nabi.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pasting all these in individually now so people can check it out, check you out, and follow you, what you're doing, and if they're a U2 fan, they definitely want to. But I also think it's just really good culture-wise to see what our culture is going through, and in the last 20 years, what happens. And there's not many, sometimes as designers, I don't think we maybe take enough. Yeah, I know what a soft return is, but thanks. It won't do it in this program, but I appreciate you telling me what it is. Anyway, it throws me off. It's the last day. I have an exam in 30 minutes.
Oh,
so,
no.
Anyway, no. I mean, I don't have an exam. I just have to. Anyway, enough about that. But if you want more information, about Design Recharge. I do this every week, pretty much. I take a couple weeks off here and there. But I interview people, interview artists, designers. I've had lawyers on here, all stuff about anything related to design. I think having that cultural part of what you're studying is really cool. Wish you spoke to web design as graphic design. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Web design is graphic design. Yeah, sorry. Anyway, so if you can always connect with me on at Design Recharge. You can also send me an email, Diane@designrecharge.org, and I'm trying to find where I have. Oh yes. So if you want to not miss an episode, you can sign up. You probably already did if you are here live, but you can sign up at this bit.ly link, Design Recharge 1, and you'll get on my email list, and you'll hear about some other cool things that I'm doing. And I keep hitting my desk, and it's shaking. It's like I'm in an earthquake. But Beth, I'm super excited. I'm glad we got through all the questions, pretty much. Oh, no, we didn't get to number 8. We'll just have to save that. But I'm excited to hear what you're doing with the memes, and so we'll have to have you back on after you do, and you're going to be, I'm sure, taking tons of pictures this weekend, right?
Yes. As the tour starts, it will get obnoxious, so if you're not interested, do not follow Beth and Bono. But thank you so much for having me, Diane. This was fantastic.
It was. You were awesome. So I'm super excited. I'm excited to see you again at CCAC, and we'll have to eat lunch or dinner or something when we're there.
Absolutely.
But thank you, guys. Make sure you tune in next week. And next week is Joseph Alesso. He is amazing. If you're not following him on Instagram, he's Alesso_Joseph, I believe. ALESSIO. And then Joseph, hopefully you can spell that. If not, you can email me and I'll tell you how to spell it. But he has done some really, really cool things with type. He's an illustrator, a typographer, a designer, and he's awesome with his hands and likes to hand letter. So definitely make sure you tune in for that. And then I am taking the next week off. I'm going to see my sister, so I'm excited about that. So in North Carolina. So hopefully I'll see some of my North Carolina friends. So I'll see y'all next week. Beth, thanks again so much, and y'all, you have a ton of fun at the U2 concert.
Thank you. Good luck with finishing the semester.
Okay, bye.